Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Bitcoin Mentor Q&A. As always, I'm Ed behind the Live Free BTC handle. Today, we're joined here by Nathan on the Bitcoin Mentor handle, and it looks like we got Andy from CrowdHealth coming up to speak with us today. If at any point you'd like to come up and ask a question, talk about Bitcoin, or just join in the conversation, we'd love to have you. How you guys doing today? Fun day, huh?
Hey, I'm doing very well, thank you, Ed. Andy, how are you, my friend?
You're muted right now. I don't know if everything's working on your end.
We'll let you get situated and settled there, but I just got like
Yeah.
a text, I think, too, Ed. Have you had anybody come out of the woodwork? I haven't. This sounds ridiculous, but I honestly haven't checked the price in like a couple hours, and I'm wondering if there was some other movement based on some text I was getting.
It's 86.5 right now, so it's definitely moved. But I have I've gotten like one somewhat like interested person that I know, but other than that, it's been pretty quiet, and I'm kind of surprised by that.
I agree. It's been unusually quiet, but I guess it just still reflects how early we are in the cycle. I know that Ben posted that he got a couple people already reached out to him. I reached out to a few people that I had at least somewhat slightly orange pilled last cycle. Like I had one buddy that I sent a text to because I told him basically along the lines of like, when you're ready for self custody, I'm more than happy to sit down with you. But he just went the ETF route in 2021.
Okay.
But it was yeah, I believe he got a bunch. I believe he regrettably, unfortunately, got a bunch of inheritance, and it was from the last cycle. I convinced him to throw at least what seems like a significant chunk into Bitcoin. So it was more or less that check in, like, "Hey, how you feeling about that decision right now?" And he's pretty happy. Now I just got to get him on the self custody route. It's fun to have that number go up. You need that freedom go up too. You need that fuck this money ability if you've got it.
Yes, and that's what I've kind of been stressing the last week or so while we've been watching the price go up. I know there's a lot of people I know that have probably bought Bitcoin. I know for a fact a few people have bought Bitcoin, and most likely on an exchange because they don't seem like
Yeah.
they're really paying attention or talking about it much. And usually you can't help but talk about Bitcoin when it's going up and you have the self custody, right? Like,
Oh yeah, dude. It's nice to have it, right? It's the what'd you call it? You know, it actually reminds me of, and it's a silly example, but I think it'll kind of make sense, and I think it'll make sense for you as well too, there, Ed. That it kind of reminds me of back in the day when I was playing music, in the sense that you would put like 23 hours into like rehearsal and preparation and gear and travel and all these things too, only for the payoff of like 1 hour up on stage, right? And so it was a ton of time and work for a very short kind of reward. And it kind of feels that same way with the Bitcoin cycles as well too. Like you got to go through a lot of flat and the bear. It's the whole 4 year cycle. There's a lot of downtime and pain, and everyone thinks you're crazy. But you get that hour up on stage where you're right, and it's at least nice to enjoy it for a little bit.
yeah, yeah, I totally relate to that. And it's unfortunate that everybody comes in right when the price is running up, and you have to give them that like caveat of, yeah, you kind of came in at like the worst time. You should have came in 6 months ago because now
Yeah,
I really strongly urge that you have the mindset of holding this for 5 years. I mean, you should do that anyway, but don't expect sizable returns now until we wait maybe like another 5 years. I mean, right now maybe we still have some run up to go, but
some runway.
just even like in January of this year, we're talking like what 20K or something like that. So we already
Yeah.
4x in less than a year. So yeah, I see we have Andy back up here though. So want to say hi to
Hey
Andy.
guys,
Hey, how you doing?
I'm well. How are y'all?
Good. Yeah, we were just talking about some of the recent price action and uh, the calls from the retail friends and family. I don't know if you have anything to add to that or you've been hearing anything on your end.
I don't know. I think did I just hear you don't think we have a long way to go up? I was like, man, we got a long way to go. It's early.
I like the the bullishness. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that like I was just saying, I think if you came in just 6 months ago, you're going to be looking at a great bull run. But now it's still gonna be good. It's just not gonna be as good, right?
I still think I'm with Andy on this. I still think we got a little bit more to run here. I think we haven't seen the biggest fireworks just yet. But pivoting for a second, Andy. So for those that aren't familiar with CrowdHealth, could you just give us a little bit of an introduction to yourself, what you guys are doing there, and also kind of most important for this conversation, how that relates to Bitcoin?
Yeah, sure. Thank you all for having me. And sorry if I bore people with the story again, but just real quick, kind of background on CrowdHealth context. This is second healthcare company, and I sold my previous company and didn't have health insurance as a result of that, and so I was a little bit ignorant and went into healthcare.gov and got a plan for me, my wife, and my two girls, and it was about $1,200 a month. And I've joked that it worked until I had to use it. My little one, who was one at the time, was having recurring ear infections, and so she didn't need a procedure. Went to the local in-network place to get that procedure done, and it was $8,000 for a 15-minute procedure. And I'm just like, holy crap, $8,000 for 15 minutes. But like, this is what health insurance is for. But unfortunately, my health plan came back and said they weren't going to pay for it because it was medically unnecessary, even though my daughter had a hole in her eardrum. And so I ended up stroking an $8,000 check to the local hospital. And it was at that point I realized that health insurance doesn't work. And so I decided I've got to figure out a way to do this differently. And so started CrowdHealth back in 2021. We are almost 10,000 members in, 20,000 bills, $10 million of bills funded by the community, with a 99.8% success rate on that. And so, in essence, what we're trying to do is build an alternative to health insurance for people like Bitcoiners, to escape the centralized corporate and government dominated industry that is healthcare. So, for healthcare is a $4.6 trillion industry, and it would be the fourth largest GDP if it were a country on its own after the United States, China, and Japan. So that's how huge it is, and the vast majority of that is bureaucracy. I mean, you can see a bunch of estimates out there, but it's somewhere between 40 and 60% of those costs are just bureaucratic costs. And so, what we're trying to do is rip out that intermediary, decentralize your healthcare. And as you can imagine, that resonates with a lot of Bitcoiners. I myself am a Bitcoiner. I got into Bitcoin around 20, late 20. And so, unfortunately, I had opportunities to get in way before, and wanted to way before, but didn't. So I'm one of those idiots that thought back in the day when it was 1,000 that we had seen too much of a run up. So I got in, and about 80% of my liquid assets. I actually had a conversation with my wife last night about this. 80% of my liquid assets are in Bitcoin. And so, we had a conversation last night, literally at the dinner table. Like, well, do you think it's going to go higher? And I told her the same thing that I just told you guys. I think it's got way, way more upside. So we are buyers and not sellers at whatever we're at, 85 or something like that. It feels like it's moved so much over the last week that it's hard to tell. But yeah, so I think it's got significant upside. So when I started CrowdHealth, I was like, man, obviously this is resonating with Bitcoiners. I office out of and am currently at the Bitcoin Commons in Austin. I sit next to guys like Marty Bent and Parker Lewis and all those guys, and I'm been since started trying to figure out, like, how do we integrate a decentralized money into a decentralized healthcare, because I think there's just all kinds of wins there. So, that's what we're up to in a nutshell. But happy to kind of go into the mechanics of how this all works, and we've been on a journey on Bitcoin too, just to be totally transparent. Given it is the largest industry pretty much in the world, if we can use Bitcoin within healthcare, I think there's just that goes a long way of hyper Bitcoinization, and that's really my ultimate goal. And now we've had a couple of regulatory hiccups over the last couple of years, and we're continuing to battle attorneys and regulatory agencies and things like that. But I think, especially with the last election, without getting too political, I think that there's a much clearer path now to using Bitcoin within our healthcare system to have it be the primary way that you pay for healthcare, and that's ultimately what we're trying to do. In the interim, we're building a community of Bitcoiners. I think we're up to 2,500 Bitcoiners or something like that are currently members of CrowdHealth, and that's Marty, and these are all people who publicly stated this, so I'm not giving away anything, but Marty is a member, Parker is a member, Safe Dean is a member, Robert Breedlove is a member, Natalie is a member. All kinds of folks within the Bitcoin ecosystem are members of CrowdHealth. And, as I ask them, why are you doing this? They're like, look, I just don't want big multinational corporations being in the middle of my healthcare. And so we're decentralizing it in a way that I think is interesting to Bitcoiners now, just being in a community of Bitcoiners. But I think will be significantly more interesting once we can use Bitcoin as the primary way of paying for your healthcare. So yeah, that's kind of the summary, but happy to fill in any of the gaps.
Yeah,
Yeah, go for it, Ed.
yeah, no, I was gonna say I have a ton of questions. I mean, there are a couple different angles we could go with this. First of all, it is what's it called, open enrollment right now. So for a lot of people, they are considering actively if they should what health plan to get. And I'm curious if you could walk us through um like an example, let's say like a family with a husband, wife, and one or more kids, how that experience would be handled through crowd health.
Yeah, right now, I went back to healthcare.gov because it is open enrollment just to see what my family would be. And of course, I'm not going to buy it, but I was just curious. And I've got four in my family, two kids, and it was $1,300 a month. And it was, I think, a $16,000 deductible. And so, what that means basically is I'm paying
Wow.
1,300 a month times 12, plus 16,000, which is what I have to pay before the health plan pays. So I'm $30,000 in before the health plan pays a dime. And that just feels absolutely ludicrous to me. And so, with Crowd Health, my family is paying a little over $600 a month, and I only have to pay the first 500 bucks of any of the health events that I have before we send the rest of the community to help out with. So, we can just walk through like a pretty run of the mill thing. If our number one expense that we help people pay for is active injuries. So we've got a crowd of people who are active. Their BMIs are about 5 points lower than the national average. The average age is about 34. And so what our community is funding are, active injuries and pregnancies. A lot of babies being born with Crowd Health, which is a ton of fun. And so let's just say you have a face plan on your bike and you go to the ER, and that's a $10,000 bill. Um, First, Crowd Health will negotiate that for you. So if you go to the ER, they have to treat you like anybody else. And so you're not getting any change of care, but they're going to send you the bills afterwards. And once they do that, then we've got a team internally, including attorneys, who will call the hospital and say, "Hey, listen, this price is egregious. There's no way that they should be paying this. Let's negotiate it." And then we're getting those bills down by 50 or 60%. So we do all that negotiation for you. Then let's just say we get it down to 5,000. We'll come back to you and say, "Hey, we got this bill down to 5,000. Can we submit this to the community?" And you say, "Yeah, great." And so you pay the first 500 bucks of that. We'll send the remaining $4,500 to the community. And if you're a Bitcoiner, we're sending it to the Bitcoin community. And so we'll ask 45 people, I'm making the math easy, for 100 bucks. And if they say yes, then they'll send 100 bucks. And this is all automated, 100 bucks from their account to your account. So at the end of the day, you have $4,500 in the account, $500 that you're submitting, and then that bill can then be paid directly from your CrowdHealth account that you set up when you sign up. So it's super super easy. The costs are significantly lower. Again, we've cut out all that bureaucracy, and so that's the way that your typical like bill would work. So yeah, super easy on the back end, way less complex than getting an explanation of benefits from the health insurance plan. And I live in Texas. Two things I hate getting in the mail are property taxes and explanation of benefits from insurance plans, because both the time you have no idea where they come up with these numbers. So at least on the healthcare side, we can't do a lot on property taxes, although I think property taxes should be illegal, from my personal opinion. We can't help you on that, but on the healthcare side, we can help you with those healthcare expenses. So that's how that works. And so we ask you once a month to help somebody else out in the community. And you, like I said, you could say yes or no. It's voluntary. The question then would be like, okay, so why would you say yes? Well, the thing that we will submit, if this person who fell off their bike or whatever, we'll share with the community, the last 10 times that they've been asked, have they said yes, 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 or have they said no, 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 right? And so if they've said yes, 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 then 100% of those the time, then those bills get funded. If they say no, to all the people that have asked them, that means they're takers and not givers, and most of the time those bills don't get funded. And so there's some community components of this that I think are really important that make this work. And so far, like I said, over 20,000 bills, it's worked beautifully. And ultimately, when you like start a company, there's the big questions that you have, like, will this work? And that was the one that I was like, are people actually going to help each other out with healthcare bills? And the answer to that has been a resounding yes, and it's actually worked a lot better than I actually thought it was going to. So it's a great way to extract yourself from the medical industrial complex, which I think is the most bureaucratic, inefficient, industry in the United States. Outside of the Federal Reserve and our monetary, the way that we deal with dollars in this country.
Yeah, and one of the things that kind of comes to my mind with what you were mentioning, with other people getting that like notification that someone needs your help, and you send them the money for that bill, um, is the, for lack of a better word, like the socialization of the cost to the rest of the members in the community, right? So walk me through, like, I imagine there has to be some kind of gate that you have to get through, like certain requirements, maybe pre-existing conditions. Is there anything like that when you're joining CrowdHealth? Because I would imagine someone that has like a lot of pre-existing conditions or medical like expectations that they're going to need a lot more care than the average person, meaning they're going to be more of a cost to the community. How do you guys like figure that stuff out?
Yeah, when we started back in 21, we had a bunch of people come in and have knee replacements and hip replacements, and then they got that funded by the community, and then they jetted out, and it was like, this just doesn't work, right? We can't have people come in who aren't a part of the community, and then and burden the community with their expenses. I call it their health debt, meaning they haven't taken care of themselves in the past and they expect somebody else to pay for them. That just doesn't work. And so the two, well, there's a couple things on that issue specifically, and there's a couple other things that limit the people who can join. But you have to own your own pre-existing conditions for 2 years. And we do that again because we just don't think that's fair that you plot stuff on other people without being a part of the community. And so after 2 years, then we'll submit those bills to the community. So that's the pre-existing condition issue. And there's a couple of other things, which is like we're building a community of people who have a high priority of taking care of their bodies. As I mentioned before, significantly less kind of obesity and things like that. So if you are obese, we're asking you to get your metabolic health in shape before joining us. So there's some limitations around weight, and we make exceptions for people who are like Sean Baker or somebody who are just jacked and are over that
Basically,
weight.
Atlas.
Yeah, there you go. And then the other one is smokers. So if you're smoking, obviously a ton of issues around that, and so we just don't allow smokers into the community. And so we've got a community who just take care of themselves. Which and again, I don't think it's right that I have to subsidize people who don't take care of themselves from a lifestyle situation. And as a result of that, the bill that and our ability to negotiate these bills down significantly are the reasons why crowd health is significantly less than any other option out there.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't have even considered that as like a pathway. But I think the big part to the success of something like crowd health is really that culture, that community of like-minded people that are coming in and all have this they're very health conscious, right? Like they want to get healthier. They're coming in, they're probably already have that idea, so they're probably already healthy. But that totally answers my question because I was always a little hung up on that idea of like someone coming in and maybe taking advantage of the system, right? And you don't want to join a community like that where people are taking advantage of you. And I think that that kind of rings true for the existing health insurance. And I'm curious if you want to maybe touch on that a bit. Currently, health insurance companies are subsidizing people with lots of medical issues and bad lifestyle habits with your premiums, and maybe that's playing a part in the premiums being so high in the first place. I'm curious if you have anything to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why premiums are so high. Look, there's a crazy stat out there that 25 cents of every dollar that you spend on healthcare goes to folks who have diabetes. And as many of us know who are kind of in the Bitcoin community, and I'm in kind of the carnivore, keto, low carb community as well. Diabetes. And by the way, the vast majority of that is type 2 diabetes, which is a lifestyle condition that is, basically putting your body through hell over, oftentimes decades. And as a result of that, are just, your metabolic health is a total disaster. And that's where you're seeing diabetes and, all kinds of other conditions that are popping up that are really, really expensive. And so, we just don't have that in our community. And so some people, the blowback on that is like, oh well, you should be able to take care of everybody and things like that. But I'm telling you, I come from the perspective of I think you need to incentivize people financially to take better care of themselves, because for some reason we have a high time preference society where people have a hard time turning down the Snickers today for a better lifestyle when you're at 60s or 70s or 80s, right? And so, we're high time preference as just a culture. And so there needs to be some incentives where you say, hey, look, if you take care of yourself, then you can significantly decrease your costs. And as a result of that, you can invest in more Bitcoin. If you're paying, my family saved $20,000 last year. And that $20,000 went to Bitcoin, and now that $20,000 looks more like 50 or $60,000, of what I saved last year on healthcare, or what I made, I guess, on healthcare by joining Crowd Health. So I think people need to have an incentive to improve their lifestyle, and we have a bunch of educational components of what we do too to you know educate people on how to do that. So we're not trying to kind of leave them out there, but I think there's a lot of things that we do internally that incentivize people and educate people on how to live a better lifestyle, which I think is just so important. I mean, look, if our healthcare system is going to change, I think the payment structure has got to change. But I also think that people need to have a little bit more of a low time preference, outlook on their healthcare. The decisions we're making, I'm 45, but the decisions making we're making in our 30s, 40s, and 50s are going to be the ones that impact us in our 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I say it often. I was like, I want our members in their 80s to be able to, run around the backyard with their grandkids and play wiffle ball, right? Like that's ultimately what thriving looks like. And they will have been retired for 30 years because they take all those savings and put them into Bitcoin. So, that's my ultimate goal, is to really see people thrive in later life. And we're trying to build an organization that incentivizes that and educates people on how to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I've always had this like intuition that, if I'm living a healthy lifestyle, I'm eating good, I'm not smoking, I'm a healthy weight, why do I not get any like deduction on my healthcare premiums? And that's always been something that's kind of interesting to me. Like I would imagine a an insurance company would in a competitive market benefit from attracting people that have the incentive to be less of a cost to them, right? So like similar to how CrowdHealth works in exactly that way, it would benefit them to get people in that have that healthy mindset and culture. Um, but yeah, Nathan, you've been a little quiet, so I wanted to give you a chance to ask a question. I know I interrupted you earlier. And also, if anyone in the audience has any questions, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll have you up here.
Well, real quick too, I would also say like it's not only just the structure that we created, but it's also just the people who have been interested in crowd health just tend to be younger, healthier individuals. We are not health insurance. We're so different from health insurance that it's just the demographic that has chosen us tends to be healthier. And so it's a self-selecting type of thing. Again, I've been to the last, I think, four Bitcoin conferences. The last one in Nashville, and you walk around, and it doesn't look like your typical demographic in terms of health. They're just yeah, right now 70, I think it's 78% or something like that of adults are either obese or significantly overweight, and I would say that is 20% of the conference that I saw, and maybe even lower than that. And so it's just a different group of people who seem to be attracted to this and this decentralized form of healthcare, and so we're thankful for that. As I mentioned earlier, I mean, 50% of our requests are going to active injuries. These are people out living life, doing what we all want to be doing, and just have something crazy happen, and it's falling off mountain bikes. We had a guy recently who is crazy story fishing, and he was in Montana fishing over the summer, and he was in bear country, wolf country. So he had a 44 on in his holster. He caught a fish. He leaned down. The gun went off. The gun fell out of his holster, went off, went into his calf, out the back of his calf, into his thigh, out the top of his thigh, into his chest, and out the back. So 6 holes, 1 bullet. And he said he looked down and he saw green stuff coming out of his chest, and he's like, I'm dead. And praise God, like got medevac to the local hospital, spent some time in a coma, got sepsis. And it's just a freak thing that happens, right? But I'm all about helping people with freak things that happen because they're out doing what they love doing, and thriving, as opposed to these chronic conditions that are a result or a product of decades of treating your body really, really poorly. So, that's 50% plus or minus a couple of percentage points depending upon the month, and then 25 or 30% are babies. And I'm all about populating the planet. Some people disagree with that. But it's 75 or 80% are in those two categories. I think last month it was like 11% or something like that were for illnesses, and even most of those are just things happen, and then the rest is wellness. So my money, I feel great because my money every month is going to an individual, a human being. It's not going through any corporation. The money you send to another member of Crowd Health every month goes directly to them. We do not get in the middle of that. We don't touch that money, and that's a really cool thing. So I just think people say, oh well, this is how insurance used to be. I was like, yeah, that's the way it used to be. That's the way it should be. And that's what we're trying to create at Crowd Health. So it's a pretty cool system where you get to fund each other every month, as opposed to sending your money to United Healthcare. I kind of joke that I actually feel good about sending my money to somebody somewhere, as opposed to being like, oh crap, I got to send another $1,000 or whatever to United Healthcare, and who the hell knows how they're using it, right? So that's a really cool part of how we do it. And again, decentralization is a really key component of what we're trying to do. We're trying to do less internally and more allow the community to fund each other, and all the fund flow goes between the community members. So that's a big component of what we're trying to do.
Oh, that's awesome, Andy. There's so many things I just want to pull apart, like double tap on there. I loved your comments also about like pro baby. I'm 100% with you. In fact, I just spent some sats this weekend to put up a a door to the bonus room because I got another one on the way.
There you go.
Very much in line with you on there as well too. The other thing that I briefly want to touch on as well too, because I don't hear it too often, but I was curious your reasoning because I feel much the same. You made the comment about property taxes should be illegal. I've got my reasons for why that, but I'm curious if they're the same as yours.
I mean, we don't really own our property, do we? I mean,
A
if
100%.
I mean, Bitcoin is one of the few things that you can own in whole without any type of the government able to come back and swipe it from you. And so, I think these property taxes are well. I live in Texas too, and so our property taxes are sky high. We don't have income tax. I mean, I think we should be able to own that asset outright, and even if I don't have a mortgage on my house, I don't, because the government is going to require that I pay them some money, and most of the times they're asking for things around. I know in Austin here, even just recently, we've got another. I think it was like 5%. My property taxes are going up next year for educational related reasons, and my view on that is, man, y'all need to figure out your budgeting, because if you need to ask 5% more from me every month, even though my property has gone up by 150% over the last 3 years during COVID, something is not wrong with our educational system. Something is wrong with the people running our educational system and the inability to budget, even though we spend 3 times as much as any other country on the planet on elementary education. And I think the last I saw was we were like 25th or 27th or something like that in education. I mean, that is a tragedy. It's a tragedy. And most of that, I think, is a result, much like our fiat, monetary system, is because you have bureaucrats in the middle of this trying to do things that are for their gain and not the gain of the citizens. So, that's my issue with property taxes, is not only do I not really own my property, but I think my property taxes are going to bureaucratic institutions that for some reason never learned how to budget. And so I think, just like our federal government is printing money left and right because they can't figure out how to budget, in no other situation is that allowable. I run an organization, I run a corporation. If I went to my board every quarter and said, "Hey, I have no idea how to run a budget," guess what? My butt would get fired. And for some reason within the government, that's the only place that you have a budget. You can miss your budget. You can significantly, run massive deficits every year and still have your job. Like, how does that work? How does that happen? It infuriates me, and I think the monetary system, our education system, our healthcare system are the three that should be in kind of the bullseye of people trying to change the way that we just operate on a day-to-day level. So it's innate in me, I think, to kind of get rid of some of these inefficiencies. I think CrowdHealth is the way to do it now. I think we can make a big change in our monetary system if we can figure out how to take our largest industry and Bitcoinize it. And so that's really what I'm trying to do. Big goals, but if you don't have big goals, why are you living life, right?
100%. You've just got to absolutely go for it. Even just like to yes and your point. For me, there was all the talk earlier in this election cycle about unrealized gains and taxing those as well too. And one of the things that I found infuriating is that they already do that. That's essentially what property taxes are. They're an unrealized tax on an asset that you hold. I mean, how shouldn't be an asset? It should just be a durable consumer good. But they've already been playing this game and just kind of snuck it past everybody under some different lingo. The other thing I just want to briefly add there as well too is that it looks like we might get some nice changes to the Department of Education in the U.S. coming up here. So I hope things like that continue, which further brings me to this idea of decentralization. And actually, another word you used earlier, that it was Matt Hill from Start9 that I first heard it from, that really caught my attention, was not only the element of decentralization, but the idea of disintermediation. And that being a really, really key component to getting these things up and running properly again. And kind of like you said, everything used to work the way it should, and we kind of got to go back to those models to get to a healthier, more balanced incentive system. So for me, I'm stuck in the Socialist Republic of Canada here. And I got to tell you, the healthcare system, I don't know why people in other parts of the world seem to talk about it as if it's got, it's functioning and helpful. It's absolutely atrocious. And one of the things that I think is most apparent is that in Canada, in the healthcare system, customer is not the patient. The customer is very much so the government that has made themselves an intermediary between the two. And you can see the effects of that with the way, with treatment, with policy, with everything that they're doing. So I'm curious from the CrowdHealth standpoint. I don't know too much about the current bureaucracy system, but I know that you guys also, at least I understand, you negotiate on behalf of people with healthcare providers as well too. Are you guys able to circumnavigate the existing administration and bureaucracy and go right to working with doctors and physicians and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, absolutely. Right now, for every doctor that is in your typical doctor's office, there is something like 2 to 3 people who are billing. The doctor spends on average about 5.5 hours a week dealing with the bureaucracy and administration. So that's 2 days a week of dealing with bureaucracy. Now, if you went in and you paid with a credit card, or with Bitcoin, as opposed to having the doctor fight with the health insurance plans, and have to have all those billing people, that's either almost zero, a negligible, fee if you're paying in Bitcoin. It's a couple percent if you're paying with a credit card, and it's 40, 50% if you're paying with health insurance. And so just ripping health insurance out of that payment process saves you, probably $1.5 trillion a year in the United States. And you said something that was I think really smart, which was, we're not the patients aren't the customers. I say that you work for whoever pays you. And so in Canada, who's paying the doctors? The government is paying the doctors. So the doctors are working for the government, not you. In our system, it's either the government or an insurance company. And so the doctors are working for the government or the insurance company. They're not working for you. And so when you step into a doctor's office, you don't have a doctor patient relationship. You've got a doctor government health insurance patient relationship, and they answer ultimately to the government or the insurance company and not you. And so that just changes that relationship significantly. Um, and I said it before, like the things I hate getting in the mail are these explanation of benefits from insurance companies where you have no idea what these things mean. They are clearly not created by a direct to consumer company, because people would leave, because it's so confusing. I had a guy, that my roommate at Stanford, who was like the number two, in our class, so one of the smartest guys you'll know. And he's like, man, the one thing that makes me feel like an idiot, and probably the only thing that makes me feel like an idiot, is health insurance, because they are not created to solve your problems. They are created to solve the problems of health insurance companies. And by the way, we can talk about this, all the perverse incentives that come along with that. So yeah, you are the product of, in Canada, the government. We are a product of health insurance and the government in the United States. And so, if you're not paying for something, you are the product. And unfortunately, we're the products. And that's a really, sad state of affairs. And I think, I give people, bunch of garbage for kind of some of these lifestyle things, but in many ways, it's the way the system is created. You go in, and the doctor, what is he paid to do? Just to resolve your symptoms, so that you don't, bitch and moan at him or her. And so what is the easiest, least friction way of doing that? They feed you a medication, it relieves your symptoms, but it doesn't allow them to get to the core root of the issue. And therefore, these issues exacerbate and turn into chronic conditions in your 60s, 70s, and 80s. And now that's why we're seeing the fact that, the last number I saw was 87% of the population is metabolically unhealthy. These doctors don't have the nutrition background, they don't have the wellness lifestyle background to actually resolve the core issue. But if you were the patient, that would change. I mean, if you were the actual customer as the patient, that would change. I mean, you would require them to be like, no, no, like, why do I keep having this thing pop up? Stop giving me medications and help me figure out what's going on with my body. Because as we've seen, especially with Dr. Baker, what he's doing over there at Rivero, many of these metabolic conditions can get alleviated with lifestyle changes. And unfortunately, our system is not set up to resolve some of those issues. There. It is set up to resolve your symptoms, and that is creating havoc within our system in the United States, and candidly within yours as well in Canada. We have so many people from Canada reaching out to us and say, please, will you do something for us in Canada? Because this system, while everybody looks at it and says, oh, it's great, it's so inexpensive, it's garbage, because if I tear my ACL, it takes me months just to get an MRI. It takes me a month to get surgery, and that's just a tragedy in many many ways.
Yeah, yeah, I think that your comments around you're not the actual customer is so true, and there's so many examples of that too. I think like the parallels to like social media companies. You're not paying for the product, you are the product, right? Like there's so many big companies, and health insurance is definitely one of them, big pharma. They're just finding ways to, I guess, continue that drip of fiat income for themselves instead of actually fixing the problem at the root cause. And I think that, it does a huge detriment to the health of the society, and it's largely just disappointing and sad at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Um, I do want to make a little pivot here, and I want you to give us like a rough idea of how Bitcoin is integrated into CrowdHealth, and how that kind of benefits people. Because I'm kind of curious, like what you guys do regarding Bitcoin.
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of the history, because anytime trying to build a Bitcoin company, especially over the last few years with kind of regulatory stuff that's going on, it's been a challenge. But I came up with the idea of Crowd Health. Like I said, about 4 years ago, and I actually had lunch with Jimmy Song. I'm pretty sure that most of the people on this call know Jimmy or know of Jimmy. He's a friend of mine, and I was talking to him about this. He's like, "Man, one of the things I don't understand about health insurance is, you pay in your premiums every month, and then they hold it in this big pool of fiat. They have to have, millions, hundreds of millions, for the big organizations, billions of dollars sitting in fiat. And so that pool of fiat is declining, as we know, due to inflation, every minute. And so it's like a lot of what you have to do, and a lot of the reasons that your premium is going up is because the power of the dollar to buy things has gone down, and therefore you have to kind of replace the inflation every year to keep that pool steady to pay for those healthcare bills. And he's like, man, why don't you have a big pool of Bitcoin as opposed to a pool of fiat? And so I was like, huh, that's kind of interesting. I had just gotten into Bitcoin. I'm super interested into, and I was like, hey man, even better, like, why is the corporation, why is a centralized organization holding a pool of any kind? And why not give that money back to the people who are relying upon that organization to help them out with healthcare bills? And so what we did to start, we, every month we ask 135 bucks. I'm going to use a single under 55 as the example, just to keep the math easy here. We ask people for up to 135 bucks to help others in the community. But we will only ask for what the community needs. So, for example, in October, we asked for 105 of the 135. Um, and so the remaining 30, you get to keep. You get to put it in your bank account, or you get to buy Bitcoin with it, or whatever. Um, and so we're listening to our Bitcoiners, and like I said, I'm here at Bitcoin Commons, and so people were like, hey, instead of giving it back to us, why don't we just convert it to Bitcoin immediately? So I'll give you all 135, but let's convert the 30 to Bitcoin, and let's stick it in whatever way that I want to hold it. And I was like, man, that's a great idea. So we started that with an organization. I'm not going to name names. Some people who've been a while, been at CrowdHealth for a while, know who it is. We started a program with an organization where you put in you submit all 130. We use 105 for the health event, that 30 gets sent to another wallet, gets converted to Bitcoin. And so in essence, what you're building is a kind of a Bitcoin health savings account. You get to hold that. We're never going to ask you for it again. You can use it in whatever way you want. But if another big health event comes up and you needed dollars, then you could use that Bitcoin, or you could just hodl and let it run. And so the people who are back with us in 21 and 22, had a substantial amount of money that was converted to Bitcoin. And then unfortunately, that organization got into some regulatory problems. A bunch of states took away their money transmitter licenses, and so some of our larger states, we weren't able to do that. So we're like, okay, well that's not working very well. And so, what if we enabled our Bitcoin members to transact 100% in Bitcoin? So we started working with some developers to build a kind of a money transmission, a Bitcoin transmission thing where we could do all of our funding over Lightning. So we had that all set up. The Lightning was working. And then we found out that the IRS came and said, hey, if you're giving to somebody else, whether it's dollars or Bitcoin or whatever, then you have to take on the cost basis of the person who is giving it to you. So if I'm going to give somebody Bitcoin, that means I then own their cost basis. So if I bought Bitcoin at 10,000 and it's at 85,000, then I would actually be on the hook for that 75,000 of capital gains, which in many cases was, a significant portion of the bill. So, and people who want to give away Bitcoin, they don't want their cap gains on the earliest Bitcoin, so they would give away their earliest, and therefore the person receiving it would have to take on the 10,000 or 20,000 or whatever cost basis, and so that made it just didn't work, as you can probably imagine, and the complexities of keeping track, so cost basis and things like that, was just not. It was so confusing that we were like, okay, we need to figure out something else. And so we are now working with another organization. We're going to be announcing it here in the next week or so, to kind of go back to that original thought where, if you're gonna put in $135 every month, that $30 is going to be converted to Bitcoin, so that you can build your own Bitcoin health savings account. And that's a great step in the direction until we get some of these IRS changes, as an interim step to be totally Bitcoinized across the entire system. So we have set up the entire front to back Lightning network transaction. It's all working. We had it ready to go until we got some of these rulings from the IRS, and that has stopped us in our track. So we're looking for more ways to increase the Bitcoin use within the ecosystem. I need, Senator Lummis's bill to be approved here in this next Senate, so that we can, reduce taxes on some of these smaller transactions. I mean, I don't think Bitcoin transactions should be, taxed any different than dollar transactions, and so we can get rid of some of this bureaucracy of Bitcoin transactions. So until that happens, we're doing this other, and I'm really excited. We're gonna announce it in the next week. I think people are gonna be pretty excited. There's gonna be some cool things that go along with that. But then the other component is you are gonna be funding your bills within the Bitcoin community. So Bitcoiners will be funding Bitcoiners. If you reach out to us and are looking for a doctor who is a Bitcoin doc, we're building a database of Bitcoin docs. And so that database is growing and growing. I think we got, I don't know, 30 or 40 or something doctors who reached out to us in the last, week or two, who are interested in folks. I had a conversation, may even be on this call, with somebody last week who is a Bitcoin doc, has got a quote unquote network of Bitcoin docs who want to help out our members. And so I just think the Bitcoin mentality changes the way that you care for people as a doctor. He agrees with me. And so we'll be able to hook you up with a Bitcoin doc to take care of you too, which I think is, a pretty cool thing. So, in essence, look, I'm a Bitcoiner at heart. Like I said, 80% of my assets are in Bitcoin. I'm trying hard to not only change the healthcare system, but change the monetary system, because I think the healthcare system could be, an interesting way to do that and have such an incredible impact. So if you can take transaction fees from 50% to, a couple basis points, I think that has a massive impact on our healthcare system, and that's ultimately what we're trying to get to. There's going to be a couple steps in on along the way, and I'm just thankful to all the Bitcoiners out there who have signed up for us and have given us a little bit of grace in terms of trying to do this. But I can tell you, we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to figure out how to make this work, and it's a journey. But I think Bitcoiners get that and understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, a couple things there. The capital gains issue, I mean, we really just like the IRS, the capital gains stuff. It's such a hindrance on the specifically Bitcoin space and the industry itself, because I can just imagine how much more generous people would be with their Bitcoin if they didn't have to face that capital gains bill come tax season. I know it's hindered me, and I imagine, like you're describing, it's hindering your business to be able to just use the Lightning Network, instant settlement of the Bitcoin transaction, and not have to worry about, okay, what's the cost basis, and recording everything in a spreadsheet so you can give it to your accountant at the end of the year. I mean, it really would be great if we could see some legislation or some exemptions for Bitcoin being used as a medium exchange, even if I've heard the under $600 for per transaction, as long as it's not obviously like structured in a way that can evade that. But that would be great and would go a long way to really help boost the Bitcoin economy and these Bitcoin companies that want to use it, and not rely on banks and not have to use the fiat rails. So that's a huge thing right there. But very interesting. I mean, I love the idea of like a Bitcoin HSA. I think that's like a, you know, I have a traditional HSA, and like I would love to just like what you were saying with Jimmy Song, like why can't I just have this in Bitcoin, right? Like
Right.
I'm missing all this upside potential. So that's a huge plus right there. I mean, even if we could just get that, I think that's going a long way in improving what we have over the existing system. Um,
I have so
I
many
so I
doctors,
do
man, that
want,
tell you like they really
yeah,
want to accept Bitcoin. They're like, if you've
that's
got
awesome
people
to hear.
who want to pay in Bitcoin, I want to accept Bitcoin. And we're seeing more and more of that. And I especially think since the run up here over the last, especially couple of weeks, right? More people want to accept Bitcoin. They want to be into the Bitcoin economy, and we're seeing it real. And this is, you know, not, I mean, not in a small way. I mean, there's a lot of doctors out there who would love to accept Bitcoin, and that's what we want to enable our members to do. So, I mean, I think, look, other than mortgages, I think healthcare is oftentimes, at least in the United States, the second largest expense. Whether people are paying for it directly or indirectly through their employer, and if we can take the second largest line item on people's budget and Bitcoinize it, I think that goes a long, long way of hyper Bitcoinization. So that's my vision, and I usually want to get to that vision on step one, and it's taken us a couple steps, but that is what the vision of the organization is going to be, is currently, and we're working hard to get there. We just need a couple help from the legislative branch to reduce the taxes on these things to make it less burdensome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I love that you guys have that mentality and that vision for your company. I think that if we get that easing of the regulation and the burden of the taxes, I think that you guys having that vision, like I said, like pushing forward, getting those things, you have that in your head, right? You're going to make it happen if you can. So I love that, and I love that. Like I said, like the community, the culture that you guys have with Crowd Health, I think is great, and I love that we have this, even like it even exists in the first place. I think it's just great overall. I want to. I know we're getting to the top of the hour. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I did want to just get your opinions and maybe some of your insights into what you're kind of excited about in general in the Bitcoin space, and it could be literally anything. It could be financial stuff. It could be technical stuff like wallets, or just in general. What are you interested in Bitcoin space right now?
Look, I mean, I just I'm most excited about potentially a government that will just allow us to freely innovate. That's what I'm most excited about. I mean, I think that there is, with this election, I think there is clearly going to be much more of a friendly legislative environment, and I think this is applicable to healthcare too. Like, let us go and run and innovate, and that's what the United States does better than anybody. Sorry to my Canadian friend, but like, if you just allow us to run, I think we could do some pretty incredible things to change this country and get it back on the right track. That starts with healthcare. It goes to budget, and I think a lot of these things can be solved through a deregulation around the Bitcoin and how we pay for things. So I'm just most excited about that, to be able to run. As somebody out there who tries to innovate and tries to do things that are different, our biggest hurdle has always been government intervention. And so if the government stops with the intervention and allows people, and by the way, most of this government intervention is under the auspice of like, oh, we're protecting consumers. It's under this kind of consumer protection. It's that funny meme where it's like, I'm the government. I'm here to save you or to protect you, right? In reality, what that does is just creates a bunch of bureaucratic BS that keeps us from innovating as a society. And so I'm excited to get back to innovation and less government intervention, less government regulation. And I think there is a place for the government to say, hey, if the companies aren't doing what they say they're doing, there can be some intervention there. But for the most part, just let governments innovate. Don't keep treating people like they're idiots. Like, they should be able to to decide for themselves what they want to buy, what they don't want to buy. And so, let's reduce this, consumer protectionism, almost like a nanny state, and let people innovate and then choose whatever they want to buy without the government getting in between. So, man, I'm fired up about that, and I hope that the upcoming administration does what they say they're going to do and significantly deregulate some of these things.
Yeah, I echo that perfectly. I think that's our best hope, right? Is we can just hope that they keep their word. And I mean, we're trusting politicians. Like, I wouldn't recommend, to lay too much credit on it, but if we can just get them to leave us alone, I think that'll just be huge. And I think that that can't be underestimated. What we could do if we're just kind of left alone for a little bit longer. I mean, 4 years is a long time, and get a lot done in that. Thank you so much, Andy, for coming and chatting. Do you want to give everybody a little outro? Maybe anything you want to clear up saying, and where people can find you and learn about Crowd Health?
Yeah, just real quick, I would say, one of the best ways that I've been able to orange pill people is around Christmas time. I give my family members Bitcoin as a Christmas gift, as opposed to stupid tchotchkes that they probably will never use or wear or whatever. And so, get your spouse, get your cousins, get your nephews, whoever you're giving money to, and get them set up with a wallet of some kind. And does it have to be self custody to start? Probably not. Like, make it easy on them, make it easy for them to understand. And I remember 3 years ago, and I gave my nephew I don't know, it was like $50 or something like that of Bitcoin, and now it's worth 4x that or something. I mean, he even called me the other day. Do you know how much this Bitcoin is worth? I was like, yeah. And so I think the best way to orange pill people is to give it to them and show them how it works. And so that would be my one thing that I have learned over the last few years of orange pilling people, is giving them real Bitcoin so that they can start to understand it. Yeah, join crowdhealth.com is the best place to find us. And if you use the code Bitcoin while you're signing up, you get the first 3 months for $99 a month, which is about 40% what we typically ask you. And so for $99, why not give it a try? See if you like it. Everybody's thinking about healthcare now that the election is gone for next year. You don't have there's no open enrollment, so you don't have to do this every single year. You can start when you want to, you can end whenever you want to. And so it's just super easy to come in and try out. And like I said, some of the most well-known Bitcoiners around are Crowd Health members, because they see the value of this decentralization. So join crowdhealth.com is the website. We'd love for you to join us.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Andy. I really appreciate you coming and spending the hour with us and chatting about it. I learned a lot, and I think that what we talked about is going to be hugely helpful to people that listen to the conversation. And if you joined in a little late, make sure you give Andy a follow. Check out CrowdHealth, and maybe even just go back and re-listen to it, because I think that we had a lot of informational stuff about the company in there. And yeah, so if you guys want to give me a follow and the Bitcoin Mentor handle a follow, you can be notified when we run the space. It's every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And we're part of Bitcoin Mentor. And if you want to learn more, you can go to bitcoinmentor.io, email one of us, book a free session, and learn about how we can help you on your Bitcoin journey. We can help you with self custody, running a node, multisig, anything that you need help with. We can get you there. Andy, hope you have a great day. And I just want to quickly point out, we all in the point of this 1 hour, we went from 86.5 to 87.5, back down to, I think we're at 86 now. So the price is going crazy. Try not to stay too glued to the screens. I know it's going to be tough. I've been a little, what's the word? Little too excited, but there it is, right?
Yeah, I
it's
try not
it's
to
gonna be
watch
fun.
it. I look at it maybe once a day. I'm in this, for the next decade. So, I'm gonna get excited when it hits a million. So there's a long way to run. One other quick thing is I see a bunch of people who are listening here who are Crowd Health members. Thank y'all. I really, really appreciate you, for giving us a shot. And yeah, just thankful for your grace and some of the startup stuff that we've gone through. Hopefully we've served you well, and just thank you so much for being willing to give us a shot. So thank you all for having me.
Absolutely, anytime. Really appreciate it.